Alright, what's going on, guys? This is Manelki, and welcome to the first video in my Stellaris tutorial series. In this series of videos, we're going to be going over all the major topics of the game, covering as much as we possibly can, in as much detail as possible, without going into any heavy-duty number crunching or anything like that. Now, I have made a video previously, sort of a tips and tricks, new player guide, kind of hit the ground running video, which you can check out here. And there is going to be a little bit of information overlap between that video and this series. But that's just kind of a very skimming the surface, kind of get you up and running real quick sort of video. This series is going to be a little bit more in-depth, a little bit more diving deep sort of thing, cover a lot more information in general, so that's what we're going to do here. Now, what is Stellaris, first of all? Well, Stellaris is a 4X kind of grand strategy hybrid made by Paradox Development Studio. They've made games like Crusader Kings, Europa Universalis, Hearts of Iron, that sort of thing. Now, if you're familiar with games like Master of Orion or Civilization, that's kind of what this is. It's kind of a hybrid. It's like Master of Orion. If you're familiar with that, that's probably the simplest comparison. It's somewhere between like a Master of Orion and a Europa Universalis kind of game. So you're just kind of going through, you're exploiting the resources, you're exploring, you're exterminating, but it's got that sort of grand strategy feel to it as well that Paradox is so good at. So it's kind of a blend between the two genres. Now, before we get going here, you may want to have a look at the settings menu. If you go under gameplay, you can alter how often the game saves, you know, monthly, quarterly, semi-annually, whatever you prefer. You can alter whether or not it saves the game to the cloud, whether you have the little in-game tutorial on. It's this little guy that pops up with little tips once in a while. It'll dictate whether or not you get the event pop-ups, little things that happen throughout the game, little pop-ups about, and whether or not they pause or unpause in the middle of the game. So something to sort of play around with depending on your preferences. Alright, so first things first, let's click New Game. Now this brings you to the Empire selection screen. So on the left hand side here, you've got all the different empires you can pick from. Now when you first start the game, you're not going to have all these ones up here with the bird beside. Those are just empires that I've created. And once you create and save an empire, they'll show up in this list with this little bird symbol here. That means you can either force them to spawn in your games, you can prevent them from spawning in your games, or if you leave it on, you can just have it randomly, whether they randomly show up in your games or not. So it's kind of a preference there. These down here are all the preset, pre-created races that Paradox has actually made. So they're kind of like stock races. They've got their own backstories. Paradox set them up. They're just stock races basically you can pick from. They're interesting. But for the purposes of this tutorial, we're going to go ahead and create our own empires. Let's go ahead and create new. So this brings us to the Empire creation screen. So on the left hand side, we have all the different categories of customization for our empire. Some of them are cosmetic, some of them aren't. So let's go through them. First one here is appearance. This is completely cosmetic and has absolutely no bearing on gameplay, so go ahead and pick anything you want, doesn't matter. Species name, just give your species a name, whatever you want. You can write a little bio here, you know, whatever you want. You've even got the plural for the name, the adjective. It's like sometimes when the game describes your race in little events, you'll need to have a plural and an objective how to describe your race. Name lists, this is purely cosmetic, just how it's going to name your planets and your ships. Now traits, this is actually quite important. This is the physiological makeup of your species. So as you see here on the left, you have trait points left, trait picks left. So we could pick a total of 5 traits with a total weight of 2. And as you see here, the red ones cost points because those are good traits. So as an example, agrarian would cost us 2 points to pick and give us plus 15% food. Whereas if you look down here, non-adaptive, that's bad, minus 10% habitability, and that would give us 2 points. And so as you see, we have more picks than points. So the idea is you kind of need to mix and match bonuses and penalties to kind of offset each other to pick what you want to pick here. So you don't have to use all 5 trait picks if you don't want to, but you can kind of mix and match. So like I said, like agrarian will get extra food. Now we're down to 0 points. Let's say we want to pick something else. We're going to have to pick something that's bad, like a small penalty, so that way we get more points to pick something else that's good. So non-adaptive is minus 2. So now I've used 2 picks. We're down to 3 picks, but we have 2 points left. So we could potentially pick something else, like I don't know, deviance. Well, actually, we don't want deviance. That's bad. You know what I mean? We want, say, like enduring, so our leaders last longer. Maybe we want like charismatic, so other races like us more. So there's all these different little, little traits, and you can go through them, and some of them are quite good. Like intelligent, you get more research output all across the board. Natural engineers, you get more engineering, that kind of thing. Resilient, better garrison health, and so on. So you can go through this list and have a look at all these different traits. And you can certainly min-max this if you want to. You don't have to, but you can certainly do that if you combine these with some of the other bonuses you get in the game. It's just all about play style, how you want to play, what you want to do, just how you want to set up your race. So this is the physiological setup of your race. So next we have the actual ruler, your starting ruler. So you can, depending on which portrait you pick, you might be able to change the phenotype. You can change the hairstyle and give this guy a hat. You can customize with the, mess around with the customization, change the clothes, the colors, whatever you want to do. You can change the room background. This is all just cosmetic, of course. You can change the sex of your ruler, give him a name, give him a ruler title, whatever, like president, whatever you want to do. That's how you do that. Now, name and class. This is your starting homeworld. So you can give your homeworld a random name. You can name it whatever you want. You can name your starting star system if you like. Your starting solar system, you can pick if you want to start in a particular solar system. I just tend to pick random, but again, that's up to you. Now, for your starting planet, there's 3 different classes of planet. You have dry, wet, and frozen. Now, the way this works is all of the planets in the galaxy are evenly distributed in terms of quantity, so there is no better pick. They're all the same. There's just as many in all the galaxy as any other ones. It's totally fine. So basically, if we were to pick this, arid, we would give our species an arid preference, which means we would have 80% arid habitability and 60% habitability for desert and savanna, which is the other 2 worlds within our dry climate. But as you see, we would get 20% habitability, which is really bad for the wet and the frozen climates. So we would really only be able to colonize dry planets to start with. Now you can change this through technology and things. You can increase your habitability, but for the time being, at the very start, we're pretty much only going to be colonizing dry planets. Now, it's important to note that when you start the game, it's going to basically give you 1 or 2 planets that are of your preference relatively close to your starting point. So the game does allow you to expand relatively quickly. Now, moving right along here, city appearance, this is purely cosmetic. Pick whatever you like. They're categorized by phenotype, but you don't have to match it. You can pick whatever you want here, purely cosmetic. Now, government and ethics, this is probably the most important thing here. This is the actual governing sort of, ethics and attitudes of your empire. So we have 3 categories here. We have ethics, authority, and civics. First of all, we have ethics. So ethic points 3. Basically what this means is, out of this wheel, you can pick things that are worth 3 points. So this inner wheel here are the basic ethics, the green ones. These each cost 1 point. So you can pick 3 of these if you like. This outer wheel, it's the same ethic, but it's the fanatic version. So let's say xenophile. That means we like aliens. If we pick fanatic xenophile, that means we really, really, really like aliens, but it costs 2 points instead of 1. So you can basically pick 3 from the inside, or maybe 1 from the outside and 2 from the inside, whichever you prefer. So you can mix and match different things. Militarist, obviously your army does more damage, you get better fire rate. Spiritualist, less unrest. Xenophile, you get better influence with other empires. They like you better. That sort of thing. So you can kind of mix and match. Now, over here in authority, this is basically like succession law from Crusader Kings or something. This is how your next ruler is decided. It's just the rulership of your empire. So you've got democratic, elected every 10 years. Oligarchic is election every 40 to 50 years. Dictatorial, upon ruler death, and imperial, and so on. And depending on the combination of what you pick here versus what you pick here, it's going to dictate what kind of civics you can pick over here. So you see we have 2 civic points. We can pick 2 of these. And there's a pretty neat bonuses if you go through them. You can pick, say, police state, get less unrest. I don't know, maybe mining guilds, get more mineral production. And you can mix and match this with your ethics and mix and match with your traits and really maximize if that's how you want to do it. You don't have to, but it's one option. Now, there's one ethic we haven't talked about yet. It's right in the middle here, hive mind. So if you pick this, it uses all 3 of your points, and you can only pick this. You can only pick the hive mind authority, and it'll give you access to a whole bunch of hive mind specific civics. Now, what is hive mind? Well, it's basically what you might expect. It's like ants, I guess, would be a hive mind. I'm not sure if bees are a hive mind. I'm not an expert on the insects or anything like that, but you know what I mean. It's like a singular consciousness, and each individual within that consciousness is like a limb or something like that. So they act as one. They're not affected by happiness. They're not affected by ethics diversion of any kind. They don't get factions. They do not get pirates. So it's a very... in a way, it's a simplified way to play. And you get these different interesting sort of, hive mind specific ethics and that sort of thing. So it's kind of neat, or civics rather. It's pretty cool. It's a different way to play for sure. Alright, so next you can just name your empire. You can name whatever you want or get a random one. It doesn't really matter. It's up to you. You can customize your flag all you like. Now, your primary color on your flag is going to dictate the color of your area, like your area within the galaxy that you control. It's also going to dictate the color of your engine trails that your ship leaves behind. So it's just a little cosmetic thing they've added recently. Now, your starting weapons, there's 3 major categories of starting weapons in the game. You have projectile, which is like kinetic weapons like bullets and mass drivers and things like that. You have energy weapons, which are beam lasers. And then you have missiles, which are missiles. So right now, mass drivers and projectiles and bullets and stuff, that's a really good pick. It's a good all-around weapon. It's kind of good at everything, really. Energy weapons are a little bit weaker against shields, but they tear up armor. So if your opponent is very low on shields or has no shields, energy weapons will do very well. Missile weapons are, kind of somewhere in between. They're in a weird spot. At the time of this recording, missile weapons are... They've just received a buff, but they're not considered to be as strong as the other two. They're a little bit more viable than they were before, but they're not quite as good, all things considered. They're undergoing balance passes right now as we speak, so hopefully missiles get improved a little bit further as the development goes on. For now, you might consider one of these other two. Missiles, if you're super into it, you want to do missiles, go for it, but I'd probably stick to one of these two, just for your first game or two. Next, we have the FTL method. This is your faster-than-light technology. There's 3 different types in Stellaris. Now, if you're coming from a game like Master of Orion or something like that, you're going to be used to hyperspace travel. So it's basically like lanes between star systems. It's very fast, but it's very limited on where you go. You can only travel along these lanes. Warp travel is a little bit slower, but you can go in any direction you want. So it's a little bit simpler if you're new to the game to comprehend. It's a little bit easier. So either one of these are perfectly suitable. Then we have wormhole, which is really interesting. So the way wormhole travel works is you build a wormhole station, and then from that you're able to travel to and from that station to anywhere in range. So you'd build like a centralized wormhole station, and then any star system with a range of that wormhole, you can go between the wormhole and then that star. And then from that star back to the wormhole, and then out to another star, and then back to the wormhole, and so on. You can't go between stars. It's like go to the star, back to the wormhole, another star, back to the wormhole, and so on and so forth. Now, it's really neat and really interesting. It's a fun way to play. The only downside, well, there's a couple. For one, they cost money to build. They cost money to maintain. And also, in times of war, the enemy can destroy them on you, which will cripple your ability to move. So it's something to bear in mind if you're going to pick wormhole travel. Next, we have ship appearance. This is purely cosmetic. Every phenotype in the game has its own little... its own type of ship here, so you just pick whatever you like. Then you can go ahead and save this. Yay, our union has saved successfully, and we're done. So next we have the game setup screen. You can customize all the different parameters of the game. So first we have galaxy size. It defaults to medium. For your first game, even medium might be a little bit big. You might think about small. Medium at the very biggest. I wouldn't go any bigger than medium because large and huge tend to be really long games. You might not want that for your first game. You can choose the shape of the galaxy. Now, this is pure preference. There is something to be said about the different galaxy shapes, though. For example, some people would argue that in a spiral galaxy, the warp drive might be a little bit underpowered because the hyperlanes can sometimes extend between arms, as well as wormhole stations between arms, whereas your starting warp drives may or may not be able to reach between arms. So there's something to be said about the strategy there, but I think in the grand scheme of things, it's not a big deal. I wouldn't worry about it, so pretty much pick whatever you like here. AI empires, how many you want to start, how many, other aliens you want to start in the galaxy, pure preference. Advanced AI starts. This is basically how many of the AIs have been given a boost at the start of the game. They're going to have a little bit more technology, they're going to have a few more planets. They start a little bit ahead of you. It's just for flavor. Max Fallen Empires. Now, Fallen Empires are interesting. They're ancient civilizations that came before, And basically, they've witnessed the rise and fall of other civilizations. They're extremely powerful. They start super powerful even when the game starts. They're just kind of sitting there. They're not vying for control of the galaxy, but they're just kind of sitting in their corner of the galaxy, just chilling. And I wouldn't recommend you mess with them. They're pretty strong. In the late game, you can certainly fight them, but when you're first getting started, better just to leave them alone. Now, quite often, I'd recommend new players turn them off entirely for their first couple of games, because the fallen empires can awaken and then start to do stuff, and it has the potential of kind of ruining your game, so you might consider turning that off your first couple of games. Habitable worlds, this is just the multiplier of how many worlds are habitable. Only so many worlds are habitable in the game. A lot of them aren't, and this will just crank the number of them depending on how you want them. I would just leave it at 1, to be honest with you. How aggressive do you want the AI? They'll be more likely to start wars if you set that high. Difficulty, this actually gives them a straight up advantage. They get bonuses through economy and research. This is pure preference. Me, I'm not a big fan of giving AI what I would call unfair advantages. Like, yeah, you want a challenge, but again, this is pure preference, whatever you think. Allowed FTL method, like we talked about, there's 3 different FTL methods, and you can allow them all, allow only certain ones, so this is pure preference here. Empire placement, there's random in clusters. Random will more or less randomly distribute the empires throughout the galaxy. Clusters will clump them into, well, clusters. So it's up to you what you want to do. Personally, I like to leave it on random, so that everything's spread out evenly. I don't start next to 50 people that I have to contend with, but again, pure preference. Advanced neighbors, it just governs whether or not the advanced AI starts, if any, can spawn right next to you. Endgame crises, these are interesting. So, as you get to the end of the game, well, the mid-late game, things are going to go horribly wrong. And this is whether you want that to happen. I don't want to spoil anything yet. We'll get to that. But things go horribly wrong, and they present major challenges for you in either mid-late game. So this is whether or not you want that to be part of the game. And Iron Man just governs whether or not you want to get achievements or not. And it'll disable loading, like saves coming, basically, is what this does. So we click done, and here we are within the game. You get a little summary of your empire here and what you've created, and they get a little story about how you rose to FDL travel. So let's talk a little bit about the interface here for a second before we go any further. We have a whole bunch of different UI elements here, and it's a grand strategy game, so it's going to be really, really daunting at first. Don't get overwhelmed or intimidated by it. We'll just go through it bit by bit. So first of all, this is your starting system. Here's Cormath, our home world. The game starts you off with a science ship, a construction ship, a spaceport, and some corvettes. So first, if you want to click this galaxy button to get a view of the galaxy, you can do that, or you can just hit E, whatever's easier. And you can have a look around the galaxy and see where you are relative to everybody else. It's all grayed out right now because we haven't explored, but as we do, it'll get colored in, and you'll see all the different empires in there. You can go back to your home system by pressing the home button. So in the top left of the screen here, we have the government button. You click that, it'll bring up some basic information about your government and its ruler. So here's our ruler traits that we start with. We get minerals and monthly unity. That varies depending on the ruler. Sometimes rulers will have an agenda, which will show up here. These are modifiers, or empire-wide modifiers. As you play the game, you'll accrue modifiers to your whole empire, which is kind of neat. Just your ethics, your civics, just a basic summary of your government. There's a budget screen here where you can look at all the income and expenses and things. There's demographics, like the different species within your empire, and different sort of, bonuses and things to your different pops and different, your outputs and whatnot. Now the next little thing here is contacts. These are all the different empires that you've met, and there's a bunch to meet, but they'll all show up here once you have. Next one over is your situation log. So anytime you have sort of little mini quests or events that'll pop up throughout the game, and quite a few will pop up, they'll all show up in here, and you can kind of manage them through here and click on them and research them and go to them, and just your sort of quest management screen, I guess, if you will. And also on the same thing, there's another tab here for victory. This is your progress towards winning the game. So, domination, win, own 40% of the planets, conquest, kill or subjugate everybody else. And you can also have a federation victory, so you can get into alliances with other civilizations called federations. And you can win the game if your federation owns 60% of all habitable planets in the galaxy. Over here we have the research, which we'll come back to later, but basically you have 3 different categories of research: physics, society, and engineering. And the way this works, in contrast to a lot of other 4X games which have research trees, this isn't so much a tree. Basically the way this works is you research something, and then when you're done, you're presented with 3 or 4, depending on your tech, or maybe more, random text to research within that category. So it's not like a linear tree or anything like that. It's more random and chaotic. So that's how that works. These are different scientists set up to research them, and you can assign better scientists or switch them around or whatever you want to do. Now in the next menu here, there's a whole bunch of little sub-menus. Planets and sectors is where you're going to manage all your, well, planets and sectors. Sometimes what you can do is you can group planets into a sector and let the AI manage it for you. This will free up, sector limits. We have 1 of 3 sectors, as you can see here, or systems rather, but we'll get into that in a little bit. Policies and edicts, you can enact different policies and rules and things for your empire. You can encourage research grants, get better engineering research here, or you can get better physics, whatever you want to do. You can set different rules and things for your empire. So you can change your war philosophy depending on what you want to do. You can, change your settlement policies. All these different policies you can tinker with to your heart's content. And the different policies here will have a bearing on the other empires and their opinion of you. For example, we have unrestricted wars. If we're dealing with a pacifist empire, like an AI empire who has the pacifist ethic, they're not going to like that we have unrestricted wars. They're likely to have a different war philosophy, which means they're going to have a negative opinion modifier of us. So it's just these different policies you can pick from and customize how you want your empire to work. Next, we have factions. So basically, these are kind of like little, factions that form within your empire once in a while. And if you look at the top here, you have all these different ethics. Of all the ethics in the game, these are the ones that are most attractive to your empire. So you see here, egalitarian is 20%. That's 20% or whatever. That's how attractive that ethic is to our population. Now, we started with militarist and materialist. So those are the 2 most attractive ethics to our population. Now, what's going to happen is every now and then factions will form based on these attractiveness values. And they're going to have different issues. So, for example, a faction might form that wants, less war, or a faction might form that wants more frontier outposts or something. And they'll have all these issues. And if you meet these demands and you make your factions happy, they're going to give you extra influence, which is a resource we'll talk about in a second. And if you piss them off, they could become hostile. So something to bear in mind. It's kind of this balancing game between, doing what you want and trying to please your factions. Pretty grand strategy-esque. Moving right along, next we have strategic resources. These are really, really, really important, very, very powerful resources that you'll find throughout the game. They give you empire-wide bonuses as soon as you have them. So they're really, really great to have. You can trade them away if you like, if you have excess, whatever you want to do. They're really good to have. We'll probably come back to those in another video. Next, of course, we have species. These are all the different species found within their empire. This will be between you, any slaves you might have, anything like that. Anybody who's integrated into your empire, all the species will show up in here, and you can modify them later through genetic tampering and stuff like that. But that's another subject for another video. Leaders. These are the different leaders in your empire. You have governors, scientists, admirals, which lead fleets, generals, which lead armies, scientists, of course, to research, and governors manage planets and sectors, and they give them little bonuses like that. So this is where you find them all. You do have a cap. Right now we're at 5 out of 10. You can increase that through technology, of course. Next, we have traditions. Now, if you've ever played Civilization 5 or something like that, you'll be familiar with this system. It basically works the same way. You accrue this resource called Unity, and as you get more Unity points, you can spend them on these little perks and bonuses, and once you finish a group, you get a bonus, and once you get an Ascension perk, which we'll talk about later, but it's very similar to that Civ 5 system, so that's what this is. Next, we have the expansion planner. Now, as you grow your borders and grow your land, basically, you're going to end up with colonizable planets within your borders. Now, this is a really great tool to use if you want to expand easily and quickly. So rather than going through the map and saying, oh, here's one, found one, I'll colonize that, you can just go to your expansion planner, and it's going to list everything you could possibly expand to within here, and you can do it all through this menu. You can sort them by habitability, are they colonizable, sort them by which race they're habitable to, because you can colonize planets with different races within your empire. Whatever you think is appropriate to the situation, totally fine. Lastly, we have the ship designer. You can design your own ships in Stellaris, which is pretty cool. There's different classes of ships you can do. You can also have the AI generate designs for you based on your current technology, which at the start of the game, if you're just getting into it, that's something you might consider doing. As you get more comfortable with the game, you may want to start designing your own ships, which is totally fine. It's a fun little pastime, little thing to mess around with. It's good times designing ships. It's a lot of fun. This is where you do that. We'll talk about this a little bit more detail in the future. Now going along here, we have our different resources. So right now we have 100 energy banked, and we have 4 coming in every month. Energy is used mostly for maintenance, so your troops are going to cost maintenance, your buildings are going to cost maintenance, your stations, your armies, everything. Everything you have costs maintenance pretty much. And so that's why you want to maintain a good energy balance. It's kind of like, you don't necessarily want to hoard it, but you do want to have a good balance. You don't want to go into the red of energy, because if you run out of energy, you're going to have all kinds of problems. So try and keep this number positive. This is minerals. This is what you use to build things. And this you do want to hoard for sure. Right now we see we have 200 and we're getting 10 a month. We have a cap of 5,000, which will of course go up with technology, and as we build certain buildings that will rise up. So use this to build things. You want to hoard this as much as you can. Really, really great thing to have. Always have more minerals. Very important. Next we have food. Now, as you can see here by the tooltip, we have 100 food. We have 4 coming in a month, and we can store a maximum of 200. So the way this works is you stockpile food up to your max, and once you've hit that maximum stockpile, any food you're bringing in over and above that maximum is going to go towards helping your population grow faster. Now the way you set that is in your policies and edicts screen. You can basically set how much you want food stockpiled. So if you go here, food stockpiling, minimal, balanced, large. Basically, if you want to grow your population really quickly, you can put it on minimal for a little bit, and that's going to cause your cap to be much lower, and therefore you're going to have a lot more excess. But of course, the problem with that is if you end up in a food shortage crisis or whatever, you're going to end up starving if one of your food plants gets blockaded or something like that. So it's a balancing act, but basically that's how it works. Any food over and above your cap will go towards making your empire grow faster, basically. Influence is your political power, basically. This is a resource that comes in. It's kind of hard to come by, sort of. You can't, well, most buildings don't make it. Some buildings do make it. It's sort of a semi-hard to come by resource. You use it to do things like colonization. You use it for frontier outpost maintenance, invading primitives. There's a lot of different uses for influence. It's a very important resource, so try and get as much of that as you can. Next, we have unity, which is the currency for the tradition system. You can get more by making buildings. Certain perks unlock more unity. It's a really good thing to have, so try and get as much of that as you can. Next, we have the research. So this is our 3 research categories. We have physics, society, and engineering. As you can see, we're getting 6, 6, and 7 every month. So the more, of course, you generate here, the faster things will research, which is always good. Try to get as much of that as you can. You can build research stations on your planets, which will increase production of this. You can also build research stations around certain interesting objects around space. In space, rather. That's a good thing to do. Get your research up. You don't want to lag behind on that. Strategic resources. The super, super important, hard to get resources of the game are called strategic resources, and as you accrue them, they'll show up here. You can mine them from planets sometimes. You can mine them from like asteroids and things like that. They're hard to come by, but once you get them, they're great. They'll show up in here and they'll just give you a flat bonus to your empire. So that's where you find those. Directly controlled systems, colonized systems. Basically, this is how many star systems you can control directly without giving anything away to the AI. So right now it says 1 of 3 because we directly control core massa. Now it's important to note this is a star system cap, not a planet cap. So if our star system had like 10 habitable planets, we could colonize all 10 of them, and it would still only say 1 of 3 here. We'd have 10 planets listed in our planets here, but it would only say 1 of 3 because this is star systems. So right now we can colonize planets within 3 different star systems, and of course you can improve this with technology and things like that. So that'll go up as the game progresses. Here we have naval capacity. Right now we're at 3 of 14 because we have 3 corvettes right here. Corvettes, of course, take 1 each. Certain bigger ships take more than 1. The naval capacity goes up as you research new technology and as you build more starports and get more planets and things like that. So that'll go up as time passes. Over here we have the outliner, which is common to all Paradox games pretty much. So we have, it'll list everything that's going on with your empire. So you've got planets, you've got fleets, civilian ships, rally points, all the major things you need to know about your empire are going to be listed here in this outliner, which is really helpful. And if you click this little cog wheel here, it'll bring up all the different things that you want or don't want to show up in your outliner. So you can turn anything off, turn things on, whatever you want to show up in there, you can customize it. Over here, you can slow down, speed up, or pause the game, which is very helpful. We have a little music player here. It's like a little MP3 player with all the different music tracks in the game. It's kind of neat. You can go back and forth there. It's pretty cool. Down here we have the different map modes of the game. Paradox games are famous for their map modes. In Stellaris, we've got, the standard Empire map mode shows you and all the different empires and their normal colors. Diplomatic map mode, your stance towards other empires. Are you at war? Are you allied? Whatever. Opinion, what do you think of each other? Attitude, your sort of stance, like are they hostile? Are they friendly? Are they weary? That sort of thing. And then you have sectors map mode, which is, do you want to see the different sectors shown on the map? Some people, it's an aesthetic thing. Some people don't like it. And then down here is just basic stuff. This is just a shortcut to your home system. Right here, details map mode. This will turn off things like the sensor range, so you can see ships within range. As you can see here, we have an unidentified empire just barely within our sensor range, which is why we can see them here. You have search. You can, if you want to know where a planet is or a star system is, you can just search for it here, and it'll take you right to it. Another common feature of Paradox games. Multiplayer chat, not really applicable right now, but I'm sure you get the idea. If you click this help button, it'll actually open up the Stellaris wiki right in the game, so it's kind of neat. You can just search for whatever you want. Pretty cool stuff, and of course just the main menu. Now, also common to all Paradox games is up here we have all the different alerts. So if anything happens in the game that's really, really important to us, it'll show up here. So right now the game's telling us that we have engineering research, society, and physics research all available to get going. We need to pick our research. So that's what the game's telling us. Anything else that's super important that needs your attention right away will show up here, like a leader died, or someone declared war on you, or something like that. So all that kind of stuff will show up here. Down in the bottom left here, you'll see 1, 2, 3, 4. These are just hotkeys. You can tap them to go towards your home system, your main fleet, go to a science ship, or go to a construction ship. And you can set custom hotkeys if you want to. Like, we can put this guy on 3 if you want, and whatever. So you can just set custom hotkeys, and your control groups will show up down here. Well, I think that's just about it for this video. I hope you found it helpful. There will, of course, be more videos forthcoming in the series, but for now, I think that's it for this one. So as always, guys, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.